Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I hope that you all are doing okay. It's a rainy Thursday here in the deep south, and I'm pretty tired. It's been a long week. Should put a hat on to cover as much of this overlarge cranium. Overlarge cranium to hold magnum-sized brain. Right, Kyle? um, what's up, Viscera? Good to see you. Hope you're having a good one. DCI, what's up? What's up? All show and no go. I hear you. Sometimes I sort of feel like I've got either too much or not enough going on, and it doesn't ever line up with the way that it needs to be. Like when it needs to be not enough, it's too much, and when it needs to be too much, it's not enough. So I sort of perpetually stuck in the middle, right? Yeah, it's man. Thank goodness tomorrow's Friday. I took a nap today, and I still don't feel that great. I'm just tired. It's been super busy. Lots of work. So, rolling around to the end of the semester, there's always a lot of stuff that kind of manifests itself out of the woodwork with people that, either need help with stuff like asking for letters of recommendation, asking for help like applying to transfer to colleges and stuff like that. People that have maybe not necessarily paid as much attention to their grades as they should have, that are now suddenly remembering like, oh crap, I'm going to get a grade in a few weeks, and having to handle that kind of stuff. There's been a lot this week. So yeah, but we're here. We're going to do some history, and we're going to see what we can make out of it. If that sounds like a plan. And this is sort of a... I don't even know how to say this without sort of explaining what's going on here in the world. So we are getting closer to our modern day history stuff, right? We're in the 900s. We're in the 800s. We're about 1,100 years away from the modern world. But what's specifically happening in a lot of these places is that we are getting more and more recorded history. And what that means when we look at it on paper is really great for historians, because it's always better to have sources written by people that lived during that time period, right? It's always way better for us to be able to look at something that is contemporary to the events that we're trying to study and get some version of a first-hand account, even if that's a biased account, right? Spainful Modern World, what's up, Moose? How's it going? Those idiots trying to enjoy the life that they have instead of memorizing facts. Vipers, I get what you're saying. I think that everybody knows that I have my criticisms of the academic model despite being involved in it, but good to see you. What's up, Tanker? How's it going? How's stuff in your world? Hope it's going okay. Anyway, we're getting to the point where we have just more history, and that poses a bit of a benefit and a bit of a problem for the stream here. The benefit is that we are going to be able to talk about more regions, especially as we get established cultures and kingdoms and established sources that we can look at archaeologically, primary sources that come from those time periods. We're going to be able to talk about more of the world. And we already do talk about, stuff on all of the continents. I try to bring in as much as I can, but we're going to be able to expand that even more as populations grow and as we get stuff like, more cities and more cultures and more civilizations. So there is a big benefit to that. On the downside, Um, I don't necessarily want to spend what might be, I don't know, 4 or 5 months per century. So, basically doing a whole stream on zoomed in countries one at a time. So we're still going to do some of that. We'll still talk about China. And I've been sort of tinkering around with the format in the last couple of months. And what I've sort of tried to figure out is do we do event type situations? Do we look at a particular event that happens during this time period in this region? At the beginning of this phase, we did the collapse of the Tibetan Empire, right? Because it just fell apart. Or do we focus on a region and then talk about all the stuff going on in it? Because we did some of that too. And what this is going to end up doing is making some of the streams a little bit less focused on one spot. Like tonight, we're going to talk about Spain and England. So we're going to be covering the Iberian Peninsula, basically Roman Spain. But at that time, of course, it's controlled by Muslims and Christians, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But we wouldn't normally have half of a stream on the Iberian Peninsula and then half of the stream on Great Britain and what's going on up there. But we're going to end up getting more stuff like that. So this poses some benefits and some drawbacks. Drawbacks. There's not necessarily going to be as much granular level detail on some of these areas. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily bother some people, but I know that can bother some people, especially when we get to a particular region that is really, really interesting, where people really want to know all the little details, and they want to know the ins and the outs, and they want to know who killed that guy and how we got this person on this person and da 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 da. So there's going to be less sort of on the ground, word by word detail, but there are going to be more instances where I'm going to end up kind of glossing over some things. And that's going to potentially open up more interesting viewer request options, right? So maybe we'll mention something and I'll go, so here's the deal. Here's what happens here. And we're not necessarily going to a whole bunch of detail. But if you want to, this would make a great viewer request stream. And then if somebody really gets interested in it, they can either bring it up in the vote, or somebody can buy it. Sure, the devil is in the details, and I do like talking about detailed stuff. But if we do that with every single area, we'll never really get through anything. We're going to get bogged down, and we're going to end up having exceedingly long phases. Some of these phases are going to have 30 episodes in them. And, imagine, hypothetically speaking, if we were to get to the 1800s and we were trying to do a stream for every country on Earth in the 1800s, right? We would be doing hundreds of streams just for that one phase. And I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. What we would do is what's going on in the big countries that are sort of the power players of this century, and what's going on in regions of the world. Are there themes that are happening in these regions of the world? Or are there big events that are happening that we can point out? And then if somebody goes, oh, wait, well, I've never really heard of that thing before. Can you explain that again? I might be able to go, oh, well, that would make a great viewer request episode. And then we can sort of zoom in on that particular topic. So the format's not really going to change. It's the delivery that we're going to look at. And then come World War II, you can literally do week by week. No, we're not going to do World War II in real time. We're not going to do that at all. The Encyclopedia Shane Tyler. Yeah, what's up, Junk Collector? Yeah, it's Viscera. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've had to put a lot of attempts. I've had to come to a lot of necessary compromises. That's the great way of putting it. We'll talk about World War II, and we could talk about World War II as a viewer request in a couple of weeks if you really wanted to. But what we're not going to do is literally go day by day through World War II, because that would take an exceedingly long amount of time. And again, I don't do this for a job. Those people on that YouTube channel make money doing that. I have day job, right? And there are a lot of World War II historians. Hey Tropical, how's it going? I didn't miss it. I just didn't know exactly how to respond to it. I should have just said hey. How's it going, Tropical? Hope that you're having a good one. Everybody knows that Spaniards are Italians. They speak Romance language. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see. Have you considered methamphetamine? Not heavily considered. I'll be honest. I am really tired right now. I could go to sleep literally right now. What's up, Fiddlia? How's it going? Eventually have all of these videos saved and categorized, and we could link them on a map and a date slider to hit. Yeah, we could. Oh, no, I'm feeling fine. It's just end of the semester stuff. It's just the work is starting to pile up, and I am not as effectively clearing it out because the amount of work looks like one thing at the beginning of the day, and then by the end of the day, there's a whole lot more stuff going on. You just got up from a nap and your eyes are burning from allergies. I woke up from a nap and I got cold, which is very, very odd for me. This is a rough time for teachers that can't foist on grad students. Yeah, I have no grad students. I have no aides. I do all of my own stuff. Well, I've let it grow out a lot, and it looks grayer when it's out. But I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm not stressed, but stuff happens. It'll look browner when I trim it. I just have it, like, it's pretty long right now. But felt like I should say that and give everybody a heads up about what's going to happen. I really don't give a crap about the gray stuff. It's who I am. I'm too much of a sociologist to give a crap about what people think about me. No, it's all good. I mean, I'm not like broken. I'm just tired. Right? I've got some tea. It's got some caffeine in it. It's going to kick me up here in just a second. It's a step closer to my Gandalf cosplay. Yeah. I don't know if I'd ever do a Gandalf cosplay. All right. Let's talk about Spain. So, the last time that we got into Spain, we left it looking sort of like this. Now, this map is in Spanish. So, if you don't speak Spanish, I'll translate it for you. This is the Emirate of Cordoba. And when we last talked about Spain, it had fallen to a Muslim invasion of the Umayyads. and the last of the Umayyad heirs had set up an emirate. Emirat is not. I wonder if this is. I wonder if this is Portuguese then. Keturba. Maybe it's Portuguese. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's not in English. Anyway, this is the Emirate of Cordoba. Yeah, I know tropical. I was taking your word for it. Reino de Asturias is Spanish. Yeah, see, that's what I was. And Peninsula Iberica, that looked Spanish to me. So, who knows? It's all European, right? Because Europe is just one big flat thing that's all the same. Where's Benidorm? I don't actually know, DCI Banks. That's a great question. I don't even know what. I don't even know what Benidorm is, just to be honest. Anyway, so this is the Emirate of Cordoba. This sort of tan, yellowish color here. The orangey yellow up here is the Kingdom of Asturias. And this is the part of Spain that had managed to remain Christian. Benidorm is like the Myrtle Beach for Brits. Ah, I see. See, I thought that was like Mallorca over here on the islands. And then we have this little pocket of country right here, which is Vasconia, which is the Basque country. And here we have the Kingdom of the Franks. We talked about them last week. But anyway, you can see that we've got basically two big groups here. We've got the Christians up here in the northeastern corner, or northwestern corner, and we've got the Emirate of Cordoba down here. And they're big and pretty powerful. Now, what are we looking at during this particular period of time? What's the sort of the groundwork going to be like? We can actually summarize a lot of this stuff pretty easily because the same sort of things end up happening for this entire century. Specifically, the border between Asturias, let me put these here. The border between Asturias and Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus is the name of the Emirate of Cordoba, is what they called it, right? Oh, it's Catalan. Oh, well, there we go, because it's got too much interesting stuff there. Yeah, Catalonian version of Spanish also has French in it, and it also has a lot of reliance on, anyway, too much stuff here going on. These two countries fight a lot. And they're going to be constantly fighting during this century. Pretty frequently along the border. Now, the trend over the century is that the Christians in the north are going to fairly steadily take land back. They're going to increase their population, and they're going to have a rebuilding period. So at the end of the last century, the kingdom of Asturias had managed to basically solidify itself as, basically we exist, but they had built a sort of a depopulated zone, which basically ran right through here as a buffer between themselves and the Muslim forces down here in Al-Andalus. But during this period of time of the 9th century, the Christian kingdom up here is going to rebuild population. They're going to move back into a lot of the cities here, and they're going to repopulate these zones. This is not necessarily going to be super duper easy for them, though. The Muslim forces, of course, don't want to give this territory up, and they definitely don't want to lose out to these particular people. Aren't the Catalonians still trying to get independence? Yeah. The last big push was back when the governor of that territory got arrested back several years ago. That was back before COVID by a couple of years. But there's a whole bunch of cultural differences in that zone that make them somewhat different than the rest of the Spanish people. That region has traditionally been a little bit different. That was the first area that Rome moved into. When Charlemagne was conquering stuff, he came down here and liberated a lot of this region from the Muslim forces, and this became known as the Spanish Marches, and brought Frankish culture down here, which is why Catalan has... so Catalan is a dialect of Spanish, but it has stuff like French influence in it, or Old Frankish influence. And it looks sort of like a mix between Portuguese and Spanish, because it also retains a little bit more of the Latin stuff at that point, because Charlemagne was trying to bring Latin back. It's a whole sort of regional dialect to itself, though. It's very unique. And the region makes a lot of money that ends up getting paid into the form of taxes to the central government of Spain. And the government of Spain does not spend very much of that money back in Catalonia. It's very much it's the same kind of situation that we have in the United States, where big states like New York and Texas and California pay a whole lot in taxes, but they don't see necessarily a very large return, whereas states like the South, like Mississippi or Arkansas, receive a whole lot in tax money coming from the government, but don't pay in a whole lot. Catalonia feels almost like it could be independent and would make enough money to have an economy of its own. I don't know if I've necessarily dug into the economics of that deep enough to have an opinion, but they seem to believe that they can. So, there we go. Buenas noches, Raveland. Salam alaikum. Yeah, indeed. Yet speaking as a native Spanish speaker, it cannot be understood. Yeah, it's... I had a friend that spent some time in Barcelona, and she had a really, really hard time trying to pick up the difference. And she's better at Spanish than I am, and she was having a really tough time. The first month she was over there was very, very emotionally tough for her, because she was sort of like mentally prepared to go over to this region and speak Spanish, and then basically ran into Catalan, and it wasn't really what she was hoping, and it was a tough transition for her. Is it different enough from... see, that's where... there's actually a lot of politics involved in that question, Tanker. Like, is it its own language, or is it a dialect of Spanish? Of course, Spain is going to say that it's a dialect. Catalonians might say that it's its own language. But I don't think that I have the linguistic level of chops to say one way or the other. I've never studied Catalonian enough in detail to make an assessment of how much of it is Spanish. They do understand it's mostly cultural to ignore that dialect. Yeah, that's true. When you came to Chicago, you were fluent in English, but you cried a lot of times because it's Americans speak faster than Americans in Puerto Rico. Yeah. So we're going to talk about Viking invasions, specifically the Danes. And that's where Dane comes in. We're not quite there yet, though. It's a reference to a Led Zeppelin song called "Fool in the Rain." Central Spain around Madrid, always sparsely populated due to demographic. No, Central Spain used to be actually the heartland of the Spanish territory, like literally the heartland. Mining was very big in central Spain back in the day, and farming in south southeastern Spain was really, really big, or southwestern Spain was really, really big back in the day. And that region was very, very, very productive for the Romans for a long, long time. And is still going to be a pretty important zone even during the time period that we're talking about today. One of the cities that we'll talk about in a little bit is Toledo, and it's sort of effectively right in the dead center of Spain. It's like right here. So, thought you missed something. Oh, you're good. You're good. I could, but the issue there is if I played Zeppelin in the background, it would mute the VOD, and I don't want the VOD to be muted. I only knew there were some Germanic tribes of the Swaves. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's not the best. I've had a crick in my neck for about a week now. Anyway, so both sides are also going to be particularly interested in stirring up rebellions in the other kingdom. Because we don't necessarily want to just fight you, we'd like you to be fighting somebody else, and then we can fight against you. So the Muslim forces in Cordoba are going to poke at specific groups up in Asturias to get them to rebel, specifically the Basques. The Basques weren't really interested in being part of the Kingdom of Asturias in the first place, but they had been brought into the fold, at least nominally speaking. But this is going to sort of backfire as they rebel. And on the other side, the Kingdom of Asturias is actually a bit more successful in stirring up rebellion inside of the Emirate of Cordoba. And part of this is due to the religious difference. So inside of the Emirate of Cordoba, of course, there's going to be lots of different people because the Umayyad forces had, just shown up about a generation and a half ago. So there's still a lot of people that aren't Muslim, and there are lots of different ethnic and religious mixes that are happening inside of the Emirate of Cordoba. You still have Jewish people who are going to rebel during this time at the prompting of some new laws that it goes through by the Emirate of Cordoba, but people like the Mulawads and the Mozarabs are going to rebel. So these are either people that lived in the region that had ended up converting to Islam, or these were people that had remained Christian inside of the country that didn't necessarily want to be under control of the Muslim forces. They're going to rebel quite a bit, and many times, especially when the Christians do the rebelling, it's going to be as a response to the Kingdom of Asturias sort of egging them on. But this is going to lead to pretty much constant fighting. If you look at the 9th century at any point during this time period in Iberia, there's going to be a war going on. And it's either going to be rebellions inside of one of these two countries, or they're going to be fighting each other, or both. Because it's pretty rough here. Who originally legended? The oldest identifiable religion that we can hypothesize is animism, and that seems to go back pretty far, potentially even before Homo sapiens, but that starts getting into a lot of speculative anthropology. I don't know if we can conclusively say that pre-sapiens religions practiced any sort of religious ideology, and when we talk about religion here, we're not talking about stuff like a priest with a hat, or even an organized religious ceremony. Here we're talking about stuff like a designation of something supernatural, right? So this is something like we have a recognition that there is life after death, or a recognition that there are forces that are unseen that affect our world. That takes a certain amount of mental capacity to even process. And based on our limited knowledge of pre-sapien species, we can only hypothesize what they might be capable of. Some people, of course, are very sort of pre-sapiens. There's actually a movement kind of. It's not even necessarily by people that are anthropologists. It's by a lot of people that are like anthropology adjacent, people that are like research psychologists, or even historical sociologists, or some people that are just sort of politically or socially woke, if you will, that have been doing a lot of stuff that tries to sort of like redeem these pre-sapien species to actually be just as good as humans. And they were just the same as us, and they had the same thing that we did, and they could do the same thing that we did. And if you criticize people that were pre-sapiens, you're just being like speciesist or ableist or stuff like that. And I don't think that is necessarily needed, and I think that might end up causing some trouble in the long run. Now, this isn't to say that sapiens adjacent species like Floresiensis or Denisova or Neanderthalensis, this isn't to say that they didn't have some of the same things that we do, but I mean, we succeeded and all the other ones didn't. There was a difference enough in our genetic makeup that we were the fittest, and we survived when they didn't. That wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just like, oh, well, they were giving it their all, and they were just as good as we were, and it was just bad luck that they all died out. No, we outcompeted them. So there's that. Side question, how long before a script was generated for Sanskrit? As in, how long was the language used before somebody wrote it down? I don't know the answer to that. I could make an educated, speculative guess. The original language of Sanskrit came from Indo-European background, but prior to the big Indo-European separation, spoken Sanskrit, I mean, maybe had been around since like 4,000 or 5,000 BC. But that's just me making kind of a guess. I don't actually know the answer to that question. I mean, there is Skinner's superstitious vision, right? Religious ideas about unforeseen forces like gravity. Frank, big time, this would be more like there is a spirit in the sky that makes it rain. Or there is a spirit in the river that becomes angry with us and floods our fields and destroys our homes. So that kind of this spirit concept, this animism thing, is what I'm talking about. Sacrifices to the strong, yeah, like the sun, right? Our God was better than the other monkeys' gods. Yeah. Buttercup, good to see you. You're Spanish. Well, welcome in. It's good to see you. Please feel free to participate. We're sort of off on a tangent right now. We do this quite a bit in the stream. We're talking about Spain, and we'll be here. We'll be here for at least a little bit more, but we're sort of off on a tangent. That happen a lot though. Would you fall in deep depression if it was discovered that written language originated in Java? One might call it a JavaScript. Bam, 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 bam. Hey! Um, we know that there were humans in Java a long time ago, but I don't think that we have any sort of evidence that they had any kind of writing until maybe the first or second century BC, you start seeing some writing show up down there. But it's mostly going to be imported from places like India, especially. The oldest inscriptions that come from the region of Java, which is, of course, down in the southeastern Asian region in Indonesia, is in actually Indian or originated script, like Sanskrit. But it's like 3,000 plus years after we have written stuff over in like Sumeria. So, oh, you're a historian as well. Awesome. And an archaeologist. Cool. Have you been on any particular digs? Do you know, or what's your specialization? There is a spirit in the sky that makes it rain. It's gravity. Well, here, no, we're talking about like religious spirit, not just gravity. Just told her. Oh, okay, cool. You're about to post her in Discord. Awesome, cool. Well, welcome on in. I'm going to stop making jokes because Shane will talk about it for 5 minutes and he's tired and you feel bad. Nah, don't worry about it. It's okay. Get on with it. I love people who can't help but answer every question. That's me. Sometimes it makes asking questions feel like kind of bullying. No, it's fine. It's okay. I like that stuff though. You're from Madrid. Oh, cool. Mainly Roman and medieval stuff. Oh, cool. So we're in the 800s right now. We're about to talk about Alfonso II. So what are trends in Spain or in the Iberian Peninsula during this time? Specifically, if we look at the Christian side of things, what are trends in the Christian part of Spain? One of those trends is a centralization of power. The Kingdom of Asturias had been mostly nobles left over from the Visigothic Kingdom of Spain that fell when the Umayyads invaded, and they didn't all get along very well. So there was a lot of infighting. The king was not even necessarily guaranteed to be able to pass the throne to his son. There was an election process with the nobles being very much involved in who got to be king. But kings like Alfonso II are going to work a lot towards pulling that power together towards a central focus. And he's going to do this in a couple of different ways. First off, he wants religious recognition. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, he was a Christian king, and as a Christian king of a Christian kingdom, he would like for specific people to say, yes, in fact, you are actually king. And if you're a Christian in the western half of Europe at this point, the person that you want to go to is the Pope. So you want the Pope to tell you and to tell everybody in your kingdom that you are actually the king. And this is going to give you religious but also political backing, because if the Pope says that you're king and then somebody rebels against you, well, then the Pope can say that that person's not king, and of course this is going to give you a lot of stability. I didn't actually show you the picture. This is Alfonso II, this guy here. He's sometimes referred to as Alfonso the Chaste. So he was apparently a chaste person that was very devout in his devotion to Christianity. Now, we can infer to a certain extent that we call him this because of his outreach to the Pope. You have to really emphasize your Christianity if you are going to get the Pope to recognize you. Absolutely. Power and religion, hand in hand. So Alfonso is going to get recognized as the King of Asturias by the Pope. So that's one way. Another way, he needs allies. Specifically, he wants powerful allies. And at the time, the biggest and most powerful political allies to have in Europe were the Franks. So Alphonse reaches out to the Franks and he says, hey, we should be friends because you fought against the Muslims and I'm fighting against the Muslims, so we should be buddies. Also, you should say that I'm king. And Charlemagne does, and further Frankish kings also recognize him as the King of Asturias. Now, this is a pretty big deal because now the Kingdom of Asturias is sort of on the map. It's got recognition from the Pope. It's got recognition from the biggest land army on the continent. And they're doing what they would consider the Lord's work by fighting against the Muslims. Now, they're also going to start, again, taking land back, but the centralization is not just in the process of external recognition. It's also about internal reconstruction. And one of the things...
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. Tropical Geek, thank you for the gift sub. And Buttercup, welcome to being Spartacus. One of us. One of us. Right? So, yo soy Spartacus. Good stuff. So, people like Alphonse II are going to go a long way towards doing also stuff like legal reform. Now, what do I mean when I say legal reform? Because that can be one of about a million different things. There's going to be some tax reform, which I know is everybody's favorite thing to talk about. It is actually tax season here in the United States, so get your taxes in, everybody. But there are also military reforms, specifically with exactly what nobles are expected to contribute to the overall military effort. Sort of moving a little bit closer to feudalism. Not all the way there yet, but moving towards it, where nobles are expected to supply a certain amount of, war material and war capability. Also, there's going to be a little bit more independence for the king, where the king gets to be a little bit more unilateral. Doesn't necessarily have to submit everything to the Council of Nobles, has a little bit more leash to kind of run around on. So that's going to help centralize power to the throne. And then there's also, there's going to be some attempts at religious reform. There are people in the Kingdom of Asturias that were still practicing their local religions. They hadn't converted to Christianity, especially people like the Basques, who still had a traditional religion that they practiced, but also some local things that the Romans would have still called pagan or something like that, or the Christianized Romans would have called pagan. So they try to do some religious reform to sort of shore up the centralization of Christianity, and that does seem to take some effect, but it's still going to be a while before everybody in this region is on board and committed to Christianity. Now, if we roll a little bit further down the line, historically speaking, we run into Alphonse III, who's not the son of the second. There are a couple of kings between them. Who's this guy? Oh no. I hate taxes. Lo siento, mi amigo. I friggin' hate taxes. Anyway, this guy. This is Alphonse III, and he is going to start doing some stuff that is loud. That was really loud. But Buttercup, thank you so much for the follow. No, it's okay. It's fine. What is it with these guys from history? They all have the same names. Well, you know, there are only so many names. As an archaeologist, I approve. Well, thank you. Yeah, I have goofy history stuff sort of scattered all through everything. So one of the things that Alphonse III really tries to start working on is this idea that the kingdom of Asturias is the natural and proper successor to the Christian kingdom of the Visigoths. So the Visigoths had converted to Christianity several hundred years prior to this and had a good run of things for quite some time. And they had good relationships with the Pope and a stable dynasty, well, mostly stable dynasty when they could get along. But anyway, Alphonse III is going to really get this idea that Asturias should be considered the new Christian kingdom of the region. And to do that, one of the things that he wants to accomplish is making his kingdom look more like kind of a stereotypical kingdom. Now, what do you do if you're a good Christian kingdom that is following the tradition of Rome and the Christian tradition of the Visigoth Spanish? What do you do? Well, a couple of the things that you do. One of them is you start writing a lot of history, and you have people make records. You have them record the events of the times, and we actually do have quite a few fairly decent primary sources that come from this period of time that tell us a lot about the people that are in the area and the people that are kind of getting stuff going. You build a lot of stuff. Right, exactly, Moose. You build a lot of stuff. And especially one of the things that you do if you're a good Christian kingdom is you build a lot of churches. And Alphonse III and subsequent rulers of the Kingdom of Asturias are going to go sort of all in on building churches. Does Buttercup have a stream? Oh, you do. Oh, well, that's spectacular. Let me see what's going on here. And where do I go? Go to the page. Interesting. Interesting indeed. You have a whole lot of followers. Well, now you have one more. Well, that's neat. I didn't know that there were other archaeology people on Twitch. Yeah, we talk about Lord of the Rings quite a bit here, but that's mostly me being a giant nerd. It's like a good Christian Minecraft server, pretty much. Let's see. Oh, there's the link. Aristotle, welcome in. This is the guy who wrote the letters asking for slavery to stop. Maybe, but I don't necessarily know that for certain. Yeah, this is Spain. Spain in the 900 or the 800s. So I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so, but I could totally be wrong. She's so much fun. Awesome. You do streams in Spanish. But you're more than welcome to come so we can translate. No hay un problema grande. Y yo sé un poco español. Suficiente para escuchar. Pero escuchar mejor que me hablo. I have to think about the words and then assemble the sentence in my head. I can listen to Spanish and understand it a lot better than I can if I actually have to speak it myself. And it might actually help me to listen. Yeah, it is a good excuse to practice. Yeah, there we go. Puedo escuchar mucho mejor que hablarlo. Yeah. Yeah, see, like, I can look at it and go like, oh yeah, that's way better than what I said. That's, I can listen much better than I speak it. And I read better than I listen. I can read Spanish really, really, really well. I can listen to it and understand most of it. But if you say, "Hey, translate this," yeah, I'm American. I'm from the south part of the United States. Are you saying? Well, I mean, tropical is from the Midwest, but I'm from the Southeast. I have a little bit of a Southern accent, but I tried to get rid of my Southern accent as much as I could. You have some archaeologist friends from Tampa, Florida. I'm several hours away from there, north and to the west. I'm about straight south of you, tropical. Anyway, where was I? What about on the other side? What are our trends in Muslim Spain at the time? Well, it's almost the opposite. In Muslim Spain at this point, things are decentralizing. So the Emirate of Cordoba is the name of the country. And Cordoba is the capital. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's where the power is. Because there are many other cities that are very powerful. Cities like Toledo and Zaragoza that are becoming centers of power outside of Cordoba. Part of this issue is that the leadership of the Emirate of Cordoba is still playing a lot of tribal-based politics from their Arab history. And to a certain extent, differences between Muslims that are Arab and Muslims that are Syrian and Muslims that are African. So there are a lot of different factions inside of the Emirate of Cordoba, and they don't always get along very well. And they use this as an excuse many times to rebel. There are so many rebellions during this century in the Emirate of Cordoba. And one of the things that has to happen as a response are the fortifications of the regions. And if we look here, this is the remains of a fortress that's called the Alcazaba of Merida. And we see here the wall that's outside of it. This was built on top of a Christian church. But you see the big wall here and then buildings inside of it. And this was built as a direct response to the city rebelling. So the city of Merida rebelled, and the emir moved an army unit to the city, built a big fortress. So the word here is Alcazaba. And he moved this military unit into this fortress in the city and basically said, you don't get to rebel anymore. And anytime you have a situation where the central power or the king or the emir or whichever person is forcing cities to behave by occupying them militarily, the situation is not very stable. If you have to threaten the people that are your citizens, they're not particularly going to be very happy with you in most cases. Good evening, JMR. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. But you start seeing these fortresses pop up in other regions and in other cities. And this is a trend that's happening during this century, because the power in this area is spreading out. It's not really held by the central part of the Umayyad core leadership anymore. Now, what this is going to do is also make them much more interested in making treaties. So when the Umayyads first invaded Spain, there were lots of attempts at pacifying them. Like, oh, could we give you part of the territory and get you to stop? Could we give you some money and get you to go away? There was and the response unilaterally was always, no, we're going to conquer you all. And that was a very powerful position to be in, and one that they enjoyed for 100-ish years. When you get into the 9th century, you start seeing the emirs go, yes, maybe we should sit down and talk this out and find a way for us to settle our differences without fighting. Maybe we should sign treaties with each other that say, I'm not going to attack you and you're not going to attack me. Maybe we need to establish some boundaries where your country ends and my country begins. And while that seems like, oh, they just set up a country and then they started becoming more civil, it's not necessarily out of a desire to make treaties. It's out of a necessity, because they can't continue to project their power at the same level anymore. They were running into issues where they couldn't back up what they were trying to get done, because they were having all of these rebellions. They were losing territory. They had limited access to resupplies, because the other Muslim countries back over in Africa were going through their whole other situation that basically cut a lot of these people off from some of the more well-developed trade routes that went back over towards the Eastern Mediterranean. So they're becoming a little bit more isolated, and they're also getting weaker because of that. Now, on the religious side, they are fairly tolerant. And this is not necessarily true of all Muslim invasions that have ever happened, but the Emirate was fairly tolerant of religion. If you were Jewish or Christian, you were probably going to be at least moderately okay. Now, there was a very high tax, but this is something that is in most places. It's called the jizya tax, which is basically a tax on people that weren't Muslim. And Christians and Jews were tolerated, but they were also second-class citizens in some instances. They were what was referred to as dahimi, where you were a person of the book. So basically, you were sort of in the larger tradition of Islam, because again, Islam grows out of Judaism and Christianity according to their religious practice. So you were sort of like one step towards Islam further than all of the other, pagan religions or non people of the book religions. So you got a little bit of a break, but there's still social boundaries. You couldn't be parts of certain positions within the civic government. You couldn't really run for office. You didn't really have as much civil liberties when it came to stuff like access to the law. If a Muslim were going to bring a lawsuit against you, you were going to probably be at a disadvantage unless you were incredibly wealthy. So there are some social restrictions to being Christian or Jewish under the Muslim rule, but it's better than just you don't exist as a person. There are some Christians especially that end up working kind of as what you might call like low-level management, like assistant to the regional manager kind of people. They're never going to really be in positions of power, but they do get some high-skilled crafts positions. They can live what we might today consider a middle-class life if you were really, really educated and had access to, a position that you could use to make money off of. That's assistant regional. Yeah, exactly. I was hoping somebody would catch that reference there. There are a lot of people that end up being Dwights that are Christian or Jewish in the Emirate of Cordoba. And many of them, just like Dwight, feel as if they have much more power than they actually do. But if we look at where we are at the end, I have a poor map that I don't really like very much, but it's what we have that shows all of the different little groups here. So if we look at 900, you can see that the kingdom here has expanded, especially along the boundary here, a fairly substantial amount. It's a bit. They've expanded a bit. But we can see here that Al-Andalus has broken up, and you have different little pockets of territory that are claiming either complete independence or they are claiming to be a vassal of the larger Andalusian world. And this is because their kingdom is kind of falling apart. It's not going to immediately fall apart. It's got another century and some change left, but it's not as powerful as it was when it first showed up. So that's what's going on in Spain. I like the UK office as well. They're very different shows. The difference between the UK and the American office. The UK office is a dark comedy where you laugh because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Because the joke in the UK comedy is that the boss is just such a horrible person, and you laugh because they are horrible. Whereas in the American office, the boss is just an idiot, and you laugh because he's an idiot. Decline, decay, I don't know which one I said. Either one works. Speaking of jolly old, let us switch over and look at what's going on in the islands. And specifically, we're going to be talking mostly here about Great Britain. We'll mention Ireland a little bit. But if we look at what we've got going on, it is not unified in the least. There are lots of countries here. Lots and lots and lots of little countries. Now, Why? Well, again, there's a reason why we haven't spent a ton of time talking about the British Isles in our journeys through history so far. And part of the reason is that this is what it looks like. And we don't know a lot about a lot. And while the period of time in the previous century, in the 8th century, does lead us to a little bit more unity, where we do get some kingdoms that are identifiable, that we have historical record of, it's still pretty tough. Oh, you're all about some Wessex? DCIs, are you a Wessex son? And the irony was that Vipers came from Ula. He was not, yeah, exactly. Well, Germany looked like that 2 weeks ago, historically speaking. Absolutely. Okay, let me try to pronounce this here. Mustalfar. So Mustalfar is what I'm going to go with, and you're welcome to tell me that I completely butchered that, or even give me a phonetic breakdown of that. But welcome. And yes, Germany did look quite a bit like that until the unification in the 1870s. So, right. England is very much diverse at this particular period of time. Now, what does that do, and what does that mean? Miss Tuip Fairer? In my head, when I was sounding it out, it almost sounded like Muspelheim, which is one of the realms of the world tree in Norse mythology. So that's sort of what I built my pronunciation off of. Fairer could be blacksmith. I'd be happy to say the correct version if you let me know how I'm supposed to say that. But welcome in, and please feel free and to involve yourself at whatever level you feel comfortable. And that wasn't a dig against England. I was just saying that there were a lot of different people there. The M is separate. The rest is your last name. Stultfar. Ah, okay. Far, okay. Okay. So, Stultfar. So we're... Gotcha. It's actually pre-Stultfar. Interesting. So you are the priestly chair. Stultfar. Well, welcome. Thank you for clarifying for me. I have the tiniest little bit of German ancestry. It's not necessarily enough for me to even claim. One of my ancestors about 14 generations back in England married a German, but that was during the Hanoverian period where the Germans were running England and it was kind of vogue to marry a German, right? So that's not enough for me to claim German. I always try to make an attempt at connecting with the people in my audience. So I do what I can. Anyway, so what's up with all these little kingdoms and why? Well, they don't really get along with each other. And part of the reason that they don't get along with each other is that they are different people. So in this time period, you have Anglo-Saxons, you have Picts, you have Celts, you have Scots and Welsh, and you also have the first beginnings of people like the Danes and the Norse. And these different groups of people don't necessarily like each other very well. They don't necessarily communicate very well. And the country was very, very, very loosely affiliated. You see lots of territorial shifts during this period of time. You get lots of people switching sides. Oh, absolutely. The geography is absolutely part of that. That's very fair to bring up. There were, of course, up in the north you have mountains. In the south you have rivers, and then on the east side you have east and west side you have swampland or marshland. They're separated by a lot of stuff here, not just the culture, but also very much the country that they live in. So good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And there's sort of an air here of we're all sort of arguing over the same kind of thing. And because they are an island region where, islands by themselves have just by nature limited natural resources, there's not as much of a place to spread out. There's only so far you can go before you hit water, or you've got to go to that other island over there. So we have these really frequent territorial shifts. Some of the kings that are claiming to be kings of these little territories are really only nominally king. They have the barest claim to king possible. So there are lots of regional power bases. The cities themselves are sometimes, you have the capital of your kingdom, but in the capital you have the king, and then, about half a mile down the road or something like that, maybe a day's ride down the road, you have another castle, and the noble that lives in that castle is arguably just as strong as your king, right? So geography is a lot, correct. Wales versus England feels a lot like New Jersey versus New York. I've never been there, so I can't say for sure. You have to go. It's quite late here. Indeed, it is quite late. Buenas noches a ti. You're welcome at any time. Thank you so much. I'll try to catch you streaming and be by. We have a Discord if you'd like to join up. It's fairly active. We usually have stuff posted every day. Oh, you live in Kent. You're a rebel. Those Kentlanders are one of the ones that are always causing the King of Wessex trouble. But thank you so much for dropping by. It's nice to meet you. And I hope to see you around again. Let's see. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for coming by. You don't know anyone killing each other over land in New Jersey? What's up, Tad? Maybe some gang violence. I don't know. I have not been in New Jersey enough to really count being in New Jersey. Back when I was in New Jersey, it was more like moving through New Jersey. It wasn't really in New Jersey. I'd love to go. I want to go anywhere though. Anyway, very decentralized. Internal threats all over the place. We have lots of infighting. Christianity, while being the religion of a lot of places, has not universalized. The nobles in many of these places are Christian and the kings are Christian, but the people are not always Christian. They might be Christian in name, but when things go bad, they go sacrifice a goat. So not all of these people are what we would call good, devoted Christians. And there are these invasions of the Northmen, who we would call the Vikings. And I don't necessarily want to go too terribly deep into the Viking stuff because we're going to spend all of next week talking specifically about who the Vikings were and what's going on. But because we're talking about England specifically, we do need to talk about some specific really big points of this Viking invasion stuff. And to begin, we're going to talk about stuff like what's going on with the invasion. Well, if we look at Viking invasions, we can look all the way back at Lindisfarne as the first really big, notable invasion. And the stuff that was happening in the early part of the 800s was not really designed to take territory. What the people from Norway or Sweden or Denmark were doing, they were showing up to take slaves and they were showing up to loot stuff. And we can tell this by the targets that they chose. They had sort of two favorite targets. One were small coastal villages. They really loved rowing up to small coastal villages, killing the men, and taking all of the women and children off as slaves. They also loved targeting religious buildings, especially monasteries and churches, because they found out they've got gold in them. So religious institutions and small coastal villages are the choice place to attack if you are a Northman raider of the time. The Christian kings of the British Isles are not going to respond to this in a way that is conducive to maintaining power. Because these kings don't like each other so much, they effectively don't even consider unifying. What they would like to do is use these invaders to pick off a couple of their enemies. And what you see in many situations are big raids of Vikings show up, and then one of the kings will be like, okay, I see that you're here to invade, but I'd like to pay you money and send you down the river to the other people that I would like for you to kill for me. And then the Vikings is like, okay, cool, no problem. We'll go kill those people. You see them paying out these differences, these different tribes to kind of get them anywhere. But then you also see the Vikings just showing up and going, okay, hey, we're here now. And the Christian kings being like, oh, well, we're going to pay you off, and then we're going to, try to be your friends. And the Vikings are like, no, I think we're just going to kill you. And if we look at what we've got going on here, this is a painting that is the execution of a East Anglian king named Edmund the Martyr. Edmund had his head chopped off by the Vikings, and this is because he initially tried to deal with them, and then when they altered the deal, he tried to attack them, and then they were like, well, we'll just kill you. We'll just kill you. So they chopped his head off. Catch up with the chat. People kill each other in New Jersey over street corners all the time. Fair enough. New Jersey, what an exit. Bada bing. Right. I don't actually know what that sounds like. Way to tempt us back for next week's episode. Yeah, indeed. Did they try to keep it low key? But that's natural. The Vikings were no threat to their power. They come, they take stuff. They exactly. Was the next lord? Yeah, exactly. It makes sense to. But you're still giving up your stuff. Theoretically speaking, if you know that they're going to come back, and they're going to come back again and again and again and again and again, at some point you think, man, we should all just get together, and next time they show up, we could just kill all of them And then when none of them go back, they won't show up anymore because they'll be like, holy crap, what happened to Jimmy? And like, oh man, he went to England. We shouldn't go over there because they'll kill all of us. Sounds like your neighboring civilization every time a barbarian shows up and takes 3 of your troops. Right. Does that count as an assassin? Yeah, sure, you can assassinate him. Pray that I don't alter it any further. Yeah, there was a subtle reference to Empire Strikes Back there. I'm altering the deal. To take your stuff a little at a time, the Lord next door might take your land and everything in it. That's true. But the guy next door is also a Christian, and these people are very much not, and are very, very scary. I don't know why I'm necessarily arguing this point so hard. To me, were I a king in England at this time and these people were showing up, one of my thoughts would be, hey man, we should all stand together and make a big army, and next time these people show up, we could just like wreck their world. Is it more fun to be killed by a fellow Christian? You're probably going to get much better treatment if they're going to kill you. They might just chop your head off, whereas the Vikings might, take a dagger and separate your ribs from your spinal cord in the back and then pull your lungs out of your back so you slowly suffocate in the blood eagle. Christians aren't going to do that to you. Ain't nobody want to get killed by the Vikings. So there's a little bit of a benefit to being killed by the local Christians. Hopefully nobody gets killed though, right? That's the ultimate hope. Doesn't always work out that way though. So there is a point in time though where we get something that is so wonderfully named. I don't know if there's a band that's ever named themselves Great Heathen Army. But that's a great name for a band. If there isn't a band that's called Great Heathen Army, there should be a band called Great Heathen Army. Oh yeah, I mean, not every single person's going to, get the Blood Eagle, but some people do. I would rather roll the dice with, Christian Bubba down the road than Viking Jimmy. Of course, I guess there is also the off chance that you might end up being dragged all the way back to Sweden and get hopped up on mushrooms and then get into an orgy in the woods and then get sacrificed to Odin, which compared to the Blood Eagle is not the worst way to die, and compared to getting your head chopped off is probably also not the worst way to die. But I don't know. If you want to win, I can say that you win. I don't know. Again, well, I don't necessarily know why I'm defending this particular point so vehemently. Those are impromptu NPC characters' names, if I've ever heard them. Christian Bubba and Viking Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, I just make these people up, right? The Great Heathen Army. This is in 865. And the Great Heathen Army is a compilation of about 4 or 5 different really big Viking raiding parties. And included in some of the raiding parties are supposedly the sons of Ragnar Lodbrok. If you've ever seen the TV show Vikings, the main character for the first few seasons is Ragnar Lodbrok, and he ends up having lots of kids, and they butcher the story really, really badly. But they actually do cover the Great Heathen Army with Ivar the Boneless, who's not portrayed accurately. I don't know why I'm arguing about that either. Anyway, if you've ever seen the show Vikings, you have probably run into this stuff. It's a decent show for the first few seasons, and then it just sort of bogs down in its own weight. They try to make way too many characters, and it just gets messy. But the Great Heathen Army is a real thing, and it shows up, and it lands in East Anglia. And the king of East Anglia at the time says, okay, check this out. Here's what we're going to do. If you don't kill us, we will give your army horses. And the Vikings are like, hey, that's great. We'll totally take horses and not kill you. And East Anglia is like, yeah, cool. And then the Great Heathen Army goes on to take York in 866. They're going to end up killing the king of East Anglia in 869. They're going to get really big reinforcements in 871. By the way, they're staying in England at this point. Like when the Great Heathen Army shows up in 865, they don't leave over the winter. They stay, which is new and scary. This big deal. So the only kings that are able to stand up to them are the kings of Wessex. There's an army that goes up to challenge the territory there, and or the basically the possession of East Anglia, because by that point the king of the guy that was calling himself the leader of the Vikings, this guy named Guthrum, who had sort of maintained that he was the proper king of East Anglia because he had killed the last king. He's a Dane, though. They end up having a big toss-up with the Wessex king and the Wessex English defeat, or the Saxons there defeat them, and things get paid off for a little while. Like, okay, we're going to pay you some money and then go over here and leave us alone for a while. But that doesn't hold out forever, because in 874, the Great Heathen Army is going to conquer Mercia, which was one of the larger of the territories in on the island of Great Britain. And they're going to basically establish themselves a state, and they're going to call it the State of Danelaw, which was the region under Danish law. Did nobody teach them the common decency to trade? They did a little bit of trading, and they did a little bit of farming, but it's mostly just taking. Trade requires records, and no one could decipher the Norse code. Fun thing about the Great Heathen Army was that it wasn't really that great in terms of manpower. Not in full-out manpower size, correct. But they were unified, at least more unified than all of the other English or Great British powers at that point. I guess I should say Saxon powers, because all these people were Saxons that they were fighting. Or not all of them, but the vast majority of them were Saxons. Or Anglo-Saxons, if you want to be super duper particular. So they were more unified, and they were physically bigger. So an average Dane was probably several inches taller and had quite a bit of reach on the average Anglo-Saxon warrior. And they were also sort of much more used to fighting than the average Anglo-Saxon. The Danes and the Norse and the Swedes, they kind of thrived on that stuff. But I don't want to get too far ahead. It'd be really bad if you were trying to use Morse code and no one understood it. Yeah, for sure. All right. Giants, exactly. We're back to the Anunnaki. Dang it. Now, one of the things that is going to sort of stop their unstoppable force is this guy. This guy named Alfred the Great, who is this dude. Now, Alfred was the king of Wessex. And he kind of figured out that he was going to have to be the one to stand up to the Danes. Basically, he was one of the only powerful Anglo-Saxon kings left, and you got to do what you got to do. There's a statue of him in Winchester, absolutely. Winchester was his capital city. We'll actually talk about Winchester in just a second, because it was one of the burghs. Yeah, pretty great guy. The giant eye thing is just always tripping me out. So Alfred the Great, let me actually break that down into like 2 lines and make it a little bit bigger. There we go. He is going to put together an army and march up and defeat the Danes on the field, and then sort of chase the king Guthrum back to his capital city, and then lay siege to the capital city, and basically force the Danes into submission. Now, this is a pretty big moment. This is in 878, and Alfred is going to establish one of the first even nominally lasting peace treaties between the Danes and the Anglo-Saxons. This is also going to establish him being Alfred as sort of the nominal leader of all of the other Saxons, but there's going to be a little bit of a peace, at least for a little while. Now, it's not going to last forever. By the time we get into the 880s, there had been dust-ups along the border, and especially by 886, Alfred has decided that the Danes really aren't going to hold on to the treaty very well. So they had already been expanding. They had already tried multiple times to send naval invasions around. So Alfred has to start thinking long term. So he builds a navy. And there are actually several references of naval battles, which is sort of kind of the first real references to naval battles that go back in English history, where you have ships full of Anglo-Saxons that are fighting off ships full of Vikings. But what's going to be sort of telling or pivotal, it may be the right word, is in 886 when Alfred retakes London. And when he retakes London, London had, of course, been a Roman territory, Roman city for a really long time. It was not as important as it is today. So clearly, capital of England is London today. It's the seat of the UK power, etc. But it was still an important city, and the Thames River was still an important viaduct of trade. And when Alfred took that back, this is sort of a momentum building moment. And the reason I mention that is because from this point forward, he is going to start referring to himself as the king of the Anglo-Saxons. Not just the king of Wessex, but the king of the Anglo-Saxons. Now, there's a symbolic importance to that, right? So if we look at the map, we have the Dane Law, which is the pinkish color here. And then we have all of what ends up being Alfred's territory. So the sort of bronze color here. Now, there are other non-Norse here in Northumbria, but suffice to say, Alfred does not get along with Northumbria. There had been significant and lasting issues between the Northumbrians and especially the Mercians and those of Wessex and Essex. They just did not get along, going all the way back a couple hundred years. But this is going to be sort of the way that things hold off. Now, we see over here, Kingdom of Guthrum. Now, one of the things that Alfred is going to manage to do, which he gets a lot of credit for, historically speaking, is that he forces Guthrum to convert to Christianity. And a lot of the leaders of the war bands of the Danes also end up converting. Now, is this an honest conversion, or is this just like, you beat me up, I've got to kind of do what you're going to tell me to do? Your guess is as good as mine, right? I'm surprised they didn't just poison them when a Dane cooks. That's not funny. Yeah, I don't really have a plucky response to that. I'm not really a big fan of Dane Cook either. The city of London is pretty small. Well, I mean, geographically, footprint-wise, at the time, it was fairly small. There were cities in the New World that were larger than London at this time. Or at least as large as London at this time. And I don't say that to denigrate the cities of the New World or to denigrate London. I'm just trying to say, like, London at this time period was not the metropolis of millions of people like it is today. It was much smaller. Now, another thing that Alfred is going to do as a way to sort of justify his position and to reinforce his position is to do some military reorganization. And specifically, he's going to focus on working on the system of boroughs. This is where we get the word, or this derives from the word burg. This is also where the modern English word borough comes from, like B-U-R-O-U-G-H. Borough, I don't know exactly how all of the different English pronunciations will pronounce it. But basically, civil jurisdiction zone. We might call them counties in the United States. We might call borough. Yeah. The very proper received accent might call them a borough. A bro. Anyway, so what is a borough? Well, it's a fortification. And specifically, one of the things that Alfred does is go to the cities where Rome had fortifications. And he rebuilds a lot of the Roman fortifications. Or if he can find where the Roman walls were, he will repair them or build on top of them. But the goal here is to create defensible positions where his government can operate even in the face of potential threat. And he puts them all over the place. And if we look at... Sorry about that. If we look at them here, borough sounds Midwestern. Yeah, like it needs an ope and some ranch dressing on it. All of the red cities here were boroughs under under Alfred's group. And all of that trouble led to the Saxons leading themselves for a good 100 years. Yeah, pretty much. They had a good run of things for a bit. And then we've got Canute. And then we've got the Normans. There's a bit of tumultuous period in time for England coming up. Heads up. But anyway, a lot of these little red dots here are boroughs. The green ones are ones that he established where there were needs. But, this is a lot of fortified positions. Again, here's Winchester. That was referenced earlier by our friend DCI Banks. This was the capital of Wessex. By the way, do I know the British TV show Horrible Histories? I do not know the British TV show Horrible Histories. I do know that there was this show that everybody laughed at recently with a red-haired lady that talks about really bad historical stuff, and everybody thought that it was basically the stuff, and I didn't watch it. Yeah, Conk on History. Yeah, that stuff. I never watched any of that either. I was like drunk history. I watched a couple of episodes of that until I realized that it was really just like let's make fun of drunk people. It wasn't really about the history. So but anyway, what's the aftermath of all of this stuff? Clearly, the islands of the British Isles are not at peace with each other. Religion is still very much a big issue here. Christianity is sort of holding on, but it's not everywhere, especially now that the Danelaw territory had been set up. Christianity had a big setback in that region. You have lots of these really, really shaky treaties. One of the problems with the subsequent rulers of Alfred's kingdom is that they can't necessarily always tell who's doing the raiding. You know, are these the Danes that are supposed to be our treaty partners, or are these other Vikings that are kind of showing up from other places? They don't always know. They blame a lot of the stuff on the Danes, and the Danes always go, "Well, those weren't Danes, man. Those are Swedes. Those are Norse, man. We're not. Those are different tribes. We can't promise anything for them." And you know, there's a lot of distrust between these groups of people here. So there's a lot of shaky ground. I have missed something great. That show is awesome, and historians checked it and had fewer mistakes in it than history books. Made for children, but really genius. Interesting. Where might one watch this? Soapfire, is this like a YouTube series, or is this well, I mean, I guess it might be a BBC British TV show. Yeah, it might be on just BBC. I don't have BritBox. But if it's popular enough, I am rather resourceful, if you know what I mean. YouTube. Horrible Histories. Interesting. I like the costuming. Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Ooh, they're like, okay, not all of them are that long. Oh, that's a compilation. Oh, I see Rowan Atkinson. Well, that's a plus. Okay, well, I'll give it a shot then. BritBox is good. The problem with BritBox is that it costs money. It was made by the BBC. Some stuff is on YouTube or the high seas. Yeah. I gotcha. We don't talk about Bruno. Used to get the magazines. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out. All right. So anyway, that is all that I particularly had prepared for the stream. And I thank everybody for participating. And we don't always have to run off, as always. We can hang around and talk for a little bit. If anybody has any questions, or if there's anything specific that you want to do, like port redemptions or anything like that. But that's all that I had planned. What I do is that I alternate. For a bit in one, you cancel it. Oh, yeah. I see. So you basically have like one subscription active at any time, and you just cycle through them. That's actually quite smart. Yeah, that's not so bad if you do it that way. Yeah. Apparently we sing about Bruno, right? You don't talk about Bruno, you sing. I haven't seen Encanto, so I don't even know the song about Bruno. I've never heard the Bruno song, but I don't necessarily go in very much for Disney stuff. I have not given Disney money in a long time. You poop on my friends like that, and I just you just canceled this Disney until I'm tired, JMR. I've been very tired. This week has been pretty rough, and I still got to go to work tomorrow and teach. Students have become very fatigued this semester. A lot of these students have not really had organized regular school for about 3 years. So some of these students were sophomores in high school when COVID hit, so they didn't finish their sophomore year properly. Then they had COVID their junior year, and then they had COVID their senior year, and now they've shown up to college and have to come to class, do their work, turn everything in on time. Attendance matters, and they're really having a pretty tough time transitioning to that. Search for the William the Conqueror song from the Horrible Histories. Interesting. I am related to William the Conqueror. He's one of my ancestors. It's okay. It's always something that happens. The end of the year is tough for everybody. There's a reason why teachers get summers, and it's not so that we can, goof off and be lazy. It's so that we can regain our sanity. If I had to teach year round, I would lose my flippin' mind. I need some time where I don't have to be in all-out mental mode. So, I'm looking forward to the summer. I really am. It's going to be nice to be able to work on the stuff that I want to work on with my mental power. I'm actually teaching a class over the summer. I volunteered to do more teaching, but it's stuff that I get to design completely by myself, and I get to teach it to interested students. So, Moose Points, moosehype.com. I'm teaching a class. Oh, I don't think I said this, but my I don't know how many people remember me saying this. Waltiverse. What's up, man? What's up? You feel that? You find teaching very yeah, man. It's tough. I love it. I really do. It's what I'm good at, and I get a lot of validation out of it. But yeah, it's a draining situation for sure. For those of you that are not following the Waltiverse, this guy is, what can I say? He's dynamite in a package. Waltiverse is a streamer here on Twitch, MFA in theater, does a lot of theater stuff. On stream, plays games, does chatting stuff. Great streamer. You should go give him a follow. Because he's a great dude. So you got to go give him a follow. Oh yeah, Walterverse is he's a good looking guy. Anyway, I was getting to kind of an announcement. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that I might be teaching a class over the summer, and I got word on Tuesday that the class had been approved, so it's going out for people to register for it. And that's good because I think that the class will fill up, so it'll basically make. But interesting class that I'm designing myself. It's more of a lecture series than it is a class. I'm going to do a lecture series on Tolkien's inspiration, specifically his inspiration from history and literature. So we're gonna. Can I register? No. It is a class at a place called Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and you have to be at least 50 years old to sign up for it. So basically, the particular university that I'm going to be working with has a big grant from the Osher Foundation, and they basically hire people to do lecture series for people that are older in life but want to keep learning. So If you are over 50, you can sign up for it. But before everybody gets really, really sad, I'm planning on using that material and doing stuff on stream as well. You got banned the other night. You all are getting banned from Walterverse? Why are you banned from Walterverse? I mean, okay, I don't know why you would do anything to get banned from Walterverse, but I don't... Anyway, so I'm going to be teaching a lecture series over the summer, and it starts in July and runs through the last week of July. So it's going to be pretty fun. I'm pretty happy about it. So I get to work on that over the summer, and it's going to be a good time. I'm very excited about that. I've been looking for ways to be more like actually academic when it comes to the Tolkien stuff that I know. I did a panel last year at Dragon Con, and I sort of got the itch. And I was like, you know what, man? I know a lot about this stuff, and I could talk about this stuff on a legit, like, academic level. So I've been trying to beef up the opportunities there, and teaching a class in this is going to go a long way towards that. So, all right, let's go and do a raid. I am what we might consider past tired at this point. Let's see who's on, and we'll see who we're going to go raid. Who we gonna raid? Where we gonna go? Let's go raid Cave Geek. We haven't raided Cave Geek in a while, and he's playing a history game. So he's playing Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is history based. So we're going to go raid Cave Geek. I have not ever raided B at Easel. Yes, like a Viking raid. And as someone who has Viking heritage, I can actually claim this without cultural appropriation. I'm related to Rollo the Viking. So, anyway, we're going to go raid Cave Geek. He's a good friend and a good streamer. Shout adventure when we arrive. Throw those adventure hat emotes in the chat. You'll appropriate the rating. That's fine. But until next time, my friends, have a good one. I hope to see everybody over the weekend. I hope I can get some rest and maybe do some Gundam building over the weekend, but I'm not going to promise anything. I hope, though. But until next Tuesday, take it easily. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Adios.